Good morning, everybody. I'm Jay Arnold, Vice Chair of the State Building Code Council. Our Chair, Todd Bayweather, is in a remote, loud location, so he has asked me to chair the meeting for today. So with that, I'd like to call the Friday, September 26th meeting of the State Building Code Council to order. Could we get a roll call, please?
Todd Bayworther,
Here.
Jay Arnold,
Here.
Shell Anderson,
I'm here.
Scott Bastiani. I know he did accept it as tentative. And Justin Borgo,
I am here.
Tom Handy, Angela Hopt, she declined the meeting. Raja Haringa,
I am here.
Ty Menser,
Here till 1:15.
Ben O'Mara,
Here.
Pete Reiki, Katie Sheehan, Dan Young,
Here.
and Tom Young.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there anybody else attending that would like to be recognized for the record? If so, please raise your virtual hand. Patrick, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. This is Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington.
Thank you, Patrick. Elizabeth, go ahead.
This is Elizabeth Torsky with Cascade Natural Gas. Thank you.
Gregory, go ahead.
Gregory Johnson with Avista.
Thank you. Mike, go ahead.
Mike Moore with Stater LLC.
Thank you. Lisa, go ahead.
Lisa Rosno, Evergreen Technology. We provide tech support for the commercial provisions of the Washington State Energy Code.
Thank you. Corey, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I'm trying to navigate traffic. Corey Shaw, Washington Aggregate and Concrete Association.
Thank you. Todd, go ahead.
Todd Titus, Heating, Air Conditioning, Refrigeration Distributors International, representing wholesale distributors for the HVACR industry.
Thank you. Thomas, go ahead.
Hi, Tom Deary, AHRI, the Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute.
Thank you, Tom. Andrew, go ahead.
Hi, Andrew Klein. I'm a consulting engineer representing AHRI.
Thank you. And Ken, go ahead.
Ken Brulette, Seattle Fire Department. How the heck are you, Andrew Klein? I've not heard from you in a while.
Oh, I'm good, Ken. How are you doing? Good.
Great. Thank you all for attending today on this special meeting where we had to postpone a week from our regular schedule. Next, we have the approval of the agenda as posted.
Jay, before we do that, I forgot the ex officio roll call. And I did see that both Pete and Katie attended the meeting, so I added them as present. So if I can go ahead and do that, I'm sorry.
Please do. Go ahead.
Lauren Lathrop.
Good morning. I'm here.
Representative Alex Rammel. Representative Suzanne Schmidt. Senator Sharon Shoemake. Senator Shelley Short. And our Assistant Attorney General Derek Meerbachtal.
I'm here, Annette. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. Okay, now moving on to reviewing and approving the agenda. This is in our packet and shown on the screen. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. This is Dan.
Could I get a second?
Second, this is Roger.
Moved by Dan, seconded by Roger. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion is approved. The agenda is approved. Next, we have reviewing and approval of the minutes from our August 15th meeting. Okay, could I get a motion to approve the minutes from August 15th?
A move to approve. This is Tom Young.
And I second, this is Dan.
Okay, moved and seconded by the Youngs. I did not ask for a public comment previously. I apologize for that. Is there any public comments on the minutes from August 15th? Seeing none, I'll move to any discussion among the council on the motion to approve the minutes. Okay, the question is on approving the minutes as posted. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Next on our agenda is public comment on items not on our agenda. Is there anyone that wants to offer public comment not on items of the 2024 building code, the petitions for rulemaking, our schedule? I don't know what else is left. Maybe a few things. Go ahead, Ken.
And I guess it's more of a personal question to SBCC staff. I had put in a request for some rulemaking for the rulemaking for a Senate bill that went in as an RCW for daycares. I just want to make sure you received that.
I got that one, and we'll be following up here.
Okay, that's all I care about. You got it. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Carolyn, go ahead.
Thanks. Carolyn Logue, here representing the Washington Air Conditioning Contractors Association. This is something that we probably should have brought up earlier, but in trying to keep track of the codes, it was a little difficult. There is a proposal that's going forward that has to do with allowing A3 refrigerants. We want to bring up a concern because the legislature just passed House Bill 1462, and while the proposal would just allow the A3 refrigerants, there's some rulemaking authority for the Department of Ecology regarding A3 and lower GWP refrigerants, and there's a task force that's going to be going into place discussing that. We would prefer to see that work be done before the State Building Code Council starts to allow. We think it's kind of stepping out ahead of where the legislature had made the decision that how A3 refrigerant should be brought into the state. So just want to make the recommendation that be pulled back and allow the work of 1462 and the rulemaking under Department of Ecology take place first. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Anyone else offering public comment on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, I will declare our public comment period closed and move on to our business. Item 5 is the 2024 code cycle schedule update. Dustin.
All right, so to introduce this one, we had an executive meeting last Monday, or executive committee meeting last Monday to discuss potential options and what a schedule shift would mean. The reasons for the schedule shift are administrative. The council staff is not able to get the filing documents ready in time to meet the October 1 filing deadline, which is just next Monday. It's just next week after this meeting. So council staff can't get the documents ready in time, and so we wouldn't be able to meet our December 1 final adoption date. And so we're have explored some options on adopting after December 1 and what that means for our implementation dates. So posted for this meeting, I have the current schedule as posted on our website, and then I also have a document outlining a couple different timelines, mainly targeting a June, a May, an April, or a March final adoption day. And those are outlining days that I'm planning to have our regular council meetings on, and observing the filing deadlines from the code revisor to get those out. And my recommendation for the council to consider would be to keep all codes on the June final adoption timeline, but we have discussed some other options as well. And so what would be most helpful for me to share on the screen, the options timeline, our current timeline, or leave it open for a discussion at the moment?
Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that it is very important that we really be clear as we start to discuss this, the definition of adoption dates and implementation dates. Currently and correct me if I'm wrong, Austin, but currently the end target is implementation by November 1st of 2026, correct?
Correct. As everything that's been, formally moved by the council, our target is November 1st of 2026 for implementation. But a strict reading of the statutes would require us to make a final adoption by December 1 this year, and those rules to set through legislative session before becoming into effect. So if we don't adopt December 1 this year, there's some statutory language that, we would be amiss of. And then if we were to do final adoption on all of our codes prior to the legislative session, we would just miss the December dates, but still get the effect of setting through the legislative session. The big issue is having documents ready to meet those timelines.
And when you're saying adoption, you're saying that we have gone through CR 102, allowed for public comment, and then made a final determination after public comment as a council.
Yes,
to
sir.
move into CR 103.
Yes, sir. So the final adoption, the characterization of that action would be the council has received public comment after a filing of CR 102, deliberated those comments, made changes as necessary for CR 103 filing, and the final adoption vote would be a direction to staff to file the CR 103 as presented at that final meeting.
Okay, thank you. I just thought it was important to get those concepts out there.
I agree.
Okay, Dustin, why don't we put up the different options with the March, April, May, and June dates, so we can talk about what those mean.
Gotcha. So I don't have it open just yet. Give me 2 seconds and I'll get it over for you guys. All right. So what we have here being shared on screen is what's published for the meeting. It is 4 separate timelines, essentially showing our final adoption date on a proposed regular council meeting date in either March, April, May, or June. Looking at the March timeline, the key dates are when the council meets to vote to file the CR 102. If we can get those in, we would have room to do it in December with the March final adoption timeline. But I don't think that staff would be able to get all of our documents prepared by that time frame. I would be prepared to offer the mechanical code and the plumbing code at that time frame. Moving through the hearings and everything, once we file CR 102 aren't on necessarily the most constricted timeline. We're trying to leave staff some time after the hearings and to develop our transcripts for those hearings, summarize the testimony received, and bring to the workshop for council to deliberate hearings comments. And then after that workshop, leaving about a month for the process to complete before we have the final CR 103 meeting. That month after the last workshop there would be a week of draft time for staff to make any final changes to documents. Leaving a 2-week room for the rule drafting service to respond. And that 2 weeks is advertised as, allow at maximum 2 weeks for RDS to get back to us with those documents. And then 1 week to post before the meeting. And I believe that the 1 week posting before our CR 103 documents is a goal that I really want to stick by. We need to do a minimum of 48 hours, but we really are trying to do things a week out before so people have time to read large documents as we get through there. And then after we do this council meeting, the CR 103 P filing can happen anytime after that final adoption, but there will be some draft work likely that needs to happen after the final meeting. And then targeting right now, as the statutes read, with a new timeline, an implementation date of May 1 of 2027. And that targets the beginning of the month after the sine die of the legislative session for 2027. And all the timelines that I'll review here kind of follow the same methodology as far as timing to get to the final adoption meeting, but they all keep the May 1 of 2027 adoption date. Getting to our, what the heck? Oh, I was at the bottom. I'm sorry. So I'll run back up to the top. So this is our March timeline, targeting March 20th for final adoption date. And I think it'd be difficult to bring a lot of the codes to that final adoption date. The next one highlights in April 17th final adoption date. Another main difference between these timelines is the amount of time that staff has from now to get the CR 102s ready for filing before our meeting to direct staff to file those documents. So still observing a month for CR 103 prep before final meeting, and quite a bit of time in between filing our CR 102 for hearings to happen and workshops to happen as well. This is our timeline for a May final adoption. This one puts our hearings in late March, and we need to file our CR 102 in January. Or have the, sorry, we'd need to file the CR 102 by February 18th, have the council meeting to direct staff to file that January 15th. And that's allowing room for any final drafting that has to happen. You know, the language wouldn't change. Statements on our CR 102 preliminary cost benefit analysis and small business economic impacts wouldn't change. It would just be any finalized RDS documents that need to happen before we file in there. And then this is my preferred timeline, and probably why I put it up at the top of the page, is a June final adoption. It gives staff quite a bit of time to get the CR 102s ready for filing. Like I said earlier, I'd be prepared to bring the UPC and the mechanical code to a December CR 102 filing timeline. But I believe that if we can keep them all together, we'll see better input from the public if we can keep all the codes together and come through with this June timeline. The one hurdle that I think is going to be a tough one for staff after CR 103 filing on this timeline is at the executive meeting, it was a committee meeting, there was discussion on whether or not there's a legislative fix to allow for the council to maintain a November 1 of 2026 deadline, or sorry, implementation date. And right now, we can't guarantee any of that, and that's why the plans are to move after the legislative session. But if that November 1 timeline is maintained and we adopt in June, I'll be working with staff to try to front load all of the publication drafting that has to happen before final adoption. But any changes after final adoption that need to be made based on our CR 103 filing could prove to be a little bit tough to get to the model code organization and to have published for any real significant time before November 1 of 2026. And that's my introduction, and recommendation is to keep all codes on a June timeline for final adoption.
Okay, thank you. I want to open it up to questions. There's a lot of information that Dustin summarized there. Chell, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Dustin, for summarizing that. I guess I have two questions. One is a strategic one. Can you explain why all the codes you would keep together? It would seem to me, as having been through this process, like having them not all together might be easier, like in two or so groups. But could you talk about that for a bit?
Well, my main reason for trying to keep all the codes together is to try, if there's any correlation items that come up as a result of any public comments, as soon as documents are filed with the code revisor's office, it becomes hard to then rewrite them before any next action by the council. So that's my prime reason, is just there's been talk about correlation happening. And if items arise, that's my prime reason. The other reason I am like to the June adoption timeline has a lot to do with the contracted work to do economic analysis and energy efficiency calculations on the energy code. We tried to do an RFP for that contract and we got one bidder. It was an incomplete bid. And so the main feedback is that the time was an issue for what we were trying to get finalized contract work done on that first RFP. Money is also part of that as well, but it was more the timeline. And so giving as much timeline as possible while also, not waiting until December of 2026 to do final adoption is what has been discussed, and kind of where I feel that the majority of folks feel we should land on delaying action on the codes.
Okay, thanks. So then I guess regarding the legislative allowance, or whatever we want to call it, the potential legislative allowance, they've already told us to implement certain codes by November 1, 2026 in the law. It seems to me like we would work towards that deadline of November 1, 2026, and let them tell us if we need to delay it by not taking an action during the legislative session. The legislative session would wrap up at least 6 months before November 1, 2026. So code officials, those who train, those who design buildings would have sufficient warning if by the end of the legislative session, if they have not exercised an option to extend those RCW dates that tell us to implement certain codes by November 1, 2026. I guess that would be my preference. Could you talk about the feasibility of having the codes enforced by November 1, 2026 if the legislature gives us that ability?
I think with our June adoption timeline that it's doable as far as getting the WAC work done. The main reason the implementation date shifted from July 1 to November 1 was to give the local jurisdictions and folks that are working with the code books a chance to have the full code text as in the most simplest package that we were putting out. So the published integrated codes through ICC, the intent was to have those available for people to work with and become familiar with for around 5 to 6 months prior to implementation. So if we do final adoption in June, and we can keep on schedule with a publication date, until today, the plan was to have codes published by July of this summer and meet that timeline for folks to work with those codes. I don't think that we'll be able to publish by July, but I think as long as we can stick on the timeline that August, I could probably have I'm not sure where the proofs will be as we cross that final adoption finish line, but if we can get it in July or August, we should be able to get code books out in September or October, based on what I've been working with ICC on as far as publication dates.
Okay, thank you.
Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, Dustin. I'm wanting to make sure I understand what the requirements of the State Building Code Council are, the actions that we have to take. You said a couple times, I think that you termed it approved the CR 102. My memory serves that 80% of the codes, I think maybe other than the IRC and the plumbing code or something like that, the council has approved those codes, all of the tag work to go into CR 102. That has already happened, right? We've got a couple stragglers out there that may actually be on the agenda today. I'm not sure. So we've, as a council, we've said, take these and put them into CR 102. Then the next, so what work has to happen? So the next action we would take as a council is approve the documents in the CR 103.
The next, so in the past, the council has not approved the cost benefit analysis or small business economic impact statement for filing. So in the last code cycle, direction was given to staff to file CR 102. All the documents were prepped, they were filed. This go around, I'm asking the council to bless the documents that we're filing. And then after that, we would, the next big action by the council would be work group response to hearing comments. And then the next action after that would be a CR 103 filing vote. And that would be for the ones that like, those are all the ones that were at the staff, please draft CR 102 documents. That's where everything's at right now. Minus the plumbing code and the mechanical code.
You're asking to have the small business and the economic impact statements done before CR 102?
They have to be. So per the APA, we have to have a preliminary cost benefit analysis available at CR 102 filing. And per the Regulatory Fairness Act, and also alluded to in the Administrative Procedures Act, we have to have also the small business economic impact statement available at CR, is part of the CR 102 filing. It's not available to go with it. It is part of the CR 102 filing.
Okay. As a related question, Dustin, if we were to go to the legislature to ask for some allowance this year that would allow the codes to go in effect in November of 26 per our current schedule, what information would be available and in an official format for the legislature when their session begins in January?
As far as our codes go?
Correct. As far as the proposed 2024 codes go.
In January, anything that we have would be on the SBCC website. We should have most of our stuff going up on our 2024 rulemaking page. Right now, that should just be CR 101 documents, code proposal logs. And as we prime the CR 102 draft and the preliminary cost benefit analysis and small business economic impact statements, as those get approved, those would be posted as well. And, as we entertain these timelines, I do see some additional benefit for there to be potential additional economic inputs received from the public on those draft documents. But that really will depend on how much time we have in between the outset from today and when we're targeting CR 102 filings for each code, if it happens to be separated that way.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council members? Okay, I want to open it up to public comment before we begin our discussion. Is there any public comment on the code schedule update? Lisa, please go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to make a comment. We'd just like to respond to the proposed shorter schedule in between when the CR 103 filing and then the final implementation date. That time period there doesn't allow, if it's pushed out further, where the actual allowed date of when the CR 103 is filed relative to the implementation date, that doesn't give a lot of time for designers to adapt their project designs to support the new code. And so the longer of a time period that's provided to those designers, it would help them a lot to be able to comply with the new code. So we would advocate for a longer time period in between the CR 103 and final implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Patrick, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. For the record, this is Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington. I said this at the executive committee meeting, but I'll say it again today. We support delay in adoption to meet the rulemaking requirements. Grateful for staff putting together these and trying to make sure they hit all the rulemaking requirements. We just ask for an equal delay in implementation as well, so that we have time to plan and prepare trainings for builders that they can meet the new requirements before they go into effect. And I think on the different options, it seems like May or June offer the best chance at meeting all those requirements, particularly in allowing time for the independent analysis for the energy code. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, back to council discussion. Shell, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Can you talk a bit more, Dustin, about the difference between the May and the June? Is your proposed 3 and you're focused on the June one, and that's more achievable. Can you talk about the difference between that? It's probably all conjecture about how, estimation about how things will work, but can you talk a bit about the difference between the May and the June versions of this and what the council gains or loses through either of them?
I would say that in both of those scenarios of a May or June final adoption date, the one probably big benefit that, or I don't know if it's a benefit or a detractor from the whole scenario, but the legislative session will have ended by then if we go to May or June. If we were looking at our April final adoption, that'll be before the end of the legislative session. And depending on what's happening there, there may be time for the legislature to react to the final adopted codes within that legislative session, but it'll be short time at that point. I would say that the big difference is mainly that from April to June is the legislative session ends. The difference between May and June is really just a little bit more time for CR 102 work, potential economic impact work. And that's really about it, is front loading the CR 102 drafting. The timelines once we hit CR 102 filing are pretty close, different numbers of days in each month. We've targeted some different different time frames, but they're like difference of a day or two, not any weeks or anything like that.
Like with neither of these, or would we be asking staff to work overtime, right?
At this point, no, I don't believe we'd be asking staff to work overtime. We are short-staffed, and I do find it a bit difficult to maintain the codes that I try to keep underneath my wing, and keep the managerial duties that I got going on as well, all happening at the same time. But the June one is the most relaxed, and as we embark on these timelines, it's also time to start considering how our 2027 code cycle integrates with where we're going to be landing on all of this. And so, original plan before this delay was being entertained, it was get publication done by mid-year and really start working on our existing amendments and significant changes reports before 2027. But the model code documents won't be available by then, so we might be just hindered to working with draft documents via ICC. They're pretty friendly with sharing those, but they're subject to change and might introduce a little bit more hassle down the road catching those small changes that happen. So, I think as we run down this pathway, it should be doable and staff won't be overburdened for the June. I think that we could bring stuff potentially in April or May, and we might be bumping up against a little bit of overtime ask for staff, but it's hard to look at it. Prior to setting out these timelines, I got with staff who've been working on the draft documents for CR 102 and have a count of hours in on that. And we're sitting around 200 hours total time staff on drafting. And, we're at about 30% complete on that. And this is, arbitrary kind of numbers placed on this because different codes have different volumes, but I tried to level each code as it's going to take out, it equals a percentage of our total work. And so based on the rough calculations, we're looking at probably another 400 to 600 hours of staff time, and that's it's not concerned, it's liberal as far as how much time that's going to take. I think it'd probably take less, but I'm trying to predict accurately.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm trying to think through, I think April probably would be too aggressive, but May or June. Trying to think through those, and July starts to get into a lot of people leaving town and lack of availability for people and vacations and all that. And since, I think setting a reasonably aggressive schedule to get done by May might be a good solution. And then if it slips, it slips, but at least we've set ourselves up to get it done in the spring before the summer season hits and people in the public and people on staff and people on the council are headed out of town, especially at end of June, that begins to happen.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Todd, go ahead.
Thank you. So thank you, Dustin, for laying this out. If we take a project, by the way, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, if you're good.
Okay. Taking a project management approach to this, what you're showing us is that there are certain dependencies between all these activities after we have a council meeting or we file the CR 102. So that said, I'm trying to think back to our requirements to publish a schedule, which is really what we're doing here. We're amending a schedule that we've published to the public. What are those requirements, if we could talk about it just for a minute? And why do we need to have these dates certain on these activities, knowing that we're really now gone critical path on one activity, and we're not going to let off the gas. When they're ready, and then everything else starts to fall, the dominoes start to fall, right? Can someone help me understand the error in that kind of judgment, that kind of strategy?
So once we file CR 102, a time clock starts ticking, and we have 120 days to do final action or file a supplementary CR 102. So that's why I have dates certain programmed throughout here. The filing deadline is advertised by the code revisor's office. They have regularly occurring deadlines. I believe it is the first Wednesday and second to last Wednesday of every month is when their filing deadlines are set out. And then 2 weeks after those filing deadlines, the register comes out. So upon register publication, we have a minimum of 20 days to wait until we can have a public hearing. And so we've got some statute that requires us to have hearings on the east and west side of the state for both Group 1 and Group 2 codes. And so that necessitates 4 days worth of hearings at a minimum. They can be consecutive. They could be spread out a little bit to work that. But the way I've got it proposed in these schedules is 4 days back to back. Staff would split up, and probably on the first days of hearings, somebody would be traveling somewhere else for the hearings on the following days. The workshop is a flexible day. We need enough time to develop transcripts and summarize testimony after the hearings close, for the council to be able to take an organized approach to responding to that public comment. And then the CR 103 drafting is a long period. I don't think it should take that long to have those documents ready, but that's, taken into account some public comment to allow for things to not necessarily go 100% to plan. And so we could likely bring up the council meeting for the final CR 103 and not be on a regularly adopted meeting or a regular meeting for the council. And I guess when we talk about our schedule, we've got two components that require us to do to identify some meetings for us. So we have the schedule as identified in the SBCC RCW, which says we're going to set our 3-year code adoption cycle, and we reserve the right to amend that timeline as needed. There's another requirement for us to identify our meetings into the future through the Open Public Meetings Act, and that requires us to set a regular meeting schedule for the year, and amendments to that schedule have to be filed 20 days prior to those changes. So anything that's not published as a regular meeting for the council, we would take the approach that is necessarily a special meeting and follow those guidelines to the Open Public Meetings Act.
If I may quickly follow up, thank you. Yes, I think we understand the fixed dependencies between each one of those activities, but thank you for explaining them. I think my point more was, why do we need to pick the number of boxes in that first row? Why can't we just say, we understand the situation, this is worst case scenario, the June timeline, but we are going to push as hard as we can and find whatever resources we can to try to minimize those number of boxes in that first row.
I guess my only thought on why it would be prudent to pick the number of boxes at the beginning and not say scattershot them as they're ready, is to afford some predictability to the public, because the whole point of our delay is to increase the transparency and garner better public input for our cost benefit analysis and small business economic impact statement. So if we say we're going to bring the codes up through as fast as possible, like I said, I'd be willing to propose bringing the plumbing code and the mechanical code in sometime in December. I think we could be ready with those documents and be confident with those documents based on the tack that we're taking at the moment. I think that I could bring the building code and the fire code in February, the residential code in April, and allowing for contract work to play out the energy codes in June. And the contract is really one of the things driving the June timeline. I want to give them enough time to go. So our RFP process is going to take about a month to get this back out to the public for them to submit bids, about another half a month to a month for us to finalize the contractor, and then whatever time it takes them to do this. And ideally, we're getting some preliminary results. It's not just a contract that runs and gives us final input on our final filing. They're going to need to take the proposals as drafted for CR 102, ideally give us some input on those, and then have some input prior to our final adoption. And then if there's any changes after final adoption, they would need to take a third, look. So the bulk of the work would come ideally before CR 102 filing. Then they would make small changes and update based on comments and changes made before our final adoption meeting. And if there's any other minor changes after occurring as a result of final adoption meeting, we would have that third look to wrap that up.
Did that cover what you wanted to cover, Todd?
It did, except that well, I don't think I'm advocating for splitting the codes up. I think it's just a matter of when something goes critical path, I think we should be as aggressive as we can and have constant monitoring and continue to push to accelerate wherever we can with whatever resources. So it's just a different strategy than saying we're going to choose a date certain, far out. So thank you.
Got it. Thank you. I'm going to continue with council comment before I circle back to public comment. Katie, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just wondering how, like, would the WUI code get factored into any of this now on a new timeline, or would it kind of continue to limp along?
Thinking about the WUI code on this one is it would depend on when those maps become available. Thinking about how that's potentially going to happen, I was envisioning that being something that kind of takes form outside of our 3-year cycle once that interpretation of authority clears up when those maps are created. But I don't think that the WUI code would necessarily would need to start up right now to try to come across in June on this. I don't think we're in a place to begin that work.
And just sort of as a follow-up, or maybe kind of my other question is, I know we talked about the 2027 code, but could you just kind of clarify a little bit so we don't think that it would affect our work on the 2027 code?
Right now, it's not. So your question, if I restate it, is if we delay, does this impact our 2027 preliminary work that we kind of have been envisioning?
Yeah.
The answer is yes and no. The full answer on why it's yes is that I had been envisioning from July until January of 26 to really be focusing in on priming that 2027 code cycle, getting reports in a place where the tags can jump off in January. In the 2021 code cycle, there were a couple codes that were not available at the outset of our work at the beginning. So we suffered some delays there because of that. And right now, ICC is advertising that all codes will be available December 31st of 2026. So, ideally, I'm hoping that we can have our existing amendments reports fairly polished by the time that date comes around, and then we'd be working on significant changes. And we have to essentially write those documents from scratch, while ICC does produce some significant changes documents, but those don't come out until after the prime codes are published. So in order to stay on our timelines, we have to keep on moving without the benefit of those documents. So the reason no, it doesn't impact our timelines for 2027 is that publication date of those codes. So if we come across in June, we can do the planning work for the 2027. We can begin drafting our existing amendments reports, but until those codes are final published, I'm hesitant to really embark on the road on saying this is the significant change and having to keep an eye out for small changes as a result of final publications.
Okay, thank you.
Roger, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize for not thanking you the past few times I've spoken up. I have to leave in about 10 minutes. I doubt that I will be, not sure what the motion is or will be, or whether I will still be around. I just wanted to restate a couple things. First off, I am a designer. I know that was mentioned both education-wise, planning-wise. It's important we know what code we are designing to. I totally agree with that. I am completely focused on the implementation date. I know there's a whole lot of work that has to happen before the implementation date. I have been pushing throughout this code cycle to make sure we don't miss the November 1st implementation date. In my mind, that's the critical piece, is when will this be implemented? If the council decides to move the implementation date out to March of 27, which I think Dustin had mentioned a time or two, then I would suggest the June date, giving staff as much time as possible. But I don't want to necessarily give up on implementing it in November if possible. And there's a couple reasons for that. Just like last time, if we delay implementation, it does impact our ability to get the next code cycle work done. I have serious doubts that wouldn't be the case if we delayed this time. And that's probably why we're challenged in this code cycle. I completely respect the comments from the public about education. Again, I am a designer trying to understand what code we're designing for. Educating ourselves is vitally important. But I also would just say we, as a council, there are a whole bunch of dates and requirements within the RCW that are not coordinated. And, you know, there's 30 months after codes are published, they're sitting through a council legislative session. There are dates specific to some particular things that were supposed to be done by November of 26. So we are very challenged from an RCW perspective. So I would like us to try, well, and then I was going to say, the technical work was done. If anybody is wondering, the technical work of the tags, that work is done. The public can take that information and look at it now. Yes, the CR 102 may not be completely published and there might be additional information coming, but understand what the changes to the code are. That information is out there. It has been public for a while. Educating myself and the staff at our firm, while it would be great to have a final code document in front of us that has everything spelled out before we start that education, yes, it would be great to have that. But as I said, we could start educating our staff today about the changes coming up in the code. We just are going to have to do a little bit of more work up front to try to understand what those changes are. So I'm going to leave it with, I really don't want us to change the implementation date if there's any way possible for us not to. If we decide to do it, then let's give the staff who are working very diligently, they're short-staffed, they're working very hard. Let's give them as much time as possible. That's my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you for getting those in before you have to depart. Lisa, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to add to my earlier comments. With regards to compliance documentation resources that support accurate enforcement of the energy code for all the new requirements, they also take time to update. And many jurisdictions rely on the accuracy of the output of these tools to complete their work. And so we just want to highlight that time is needed to develop those resources. With the CR 102, when that's presented to us, to those that work on these resources, yes, we can proceed and make progress on those tools based on the CR 102. However, since sometimes substantial changes can come out of public comment, we're going to hesitate to put a lot of resources into finalizing those tools until we're able to see the final CR 103 so that tools don't have to be updated and then updated again. And so we just want to highlight the need for a reasonable time period to develop those resources that a lot of folks in the industry now rely on. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Lisa. Micah, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank staff. I know this is tough to do in that amount of time since I do a similar job for the city of Seattle, so I know this is the level you have to go through. This is unfortunate for the delay. I have no problem with it because I know what it occurs. The unfortunate part comes from the rushed tag process, especially with the IRC tag, where meetings were regularly occurring twice a week and only giving the public maybe 24 hours to review the changes from the last tag before they had to have information ready for discussion at the next tag meeting. So the delay is unfortunate considering we were so rushed on some of these tag processes. And I agree with Roger, the work was done, but that's a similar complaint when I was on the SBCC for the WUI code. The public complained about the rush process, and they didn't have enough time to participate. And I definitely think that occurred. And it's unfortunate that that did, since we are going to delay, at least it seems like you all are going to vote to delay this, which is fine. I didn't hear clarity on, I have multiple things here, I'll try to get done real quick. I didn't hear clarity on the legislative code change requirements, which have specific timelines. Are those going to make the CR 102 process and public comment hearings on a separate schedule than the entire code package? So I'd like to hear about that. Additionally, from Director Kerb here, I'd like to hear about further information on correlation and publication of those codes and the timeline, if that is after the adoption. Seems like there's a while in there. And then, of course, the question hasn't been mentioned here. I believe it was mentioned at the executive committee asking about the 30-month requirement and how we are not meeting that RCW at this point and what are any impacts there. And with the WUI code information that came up, once the WUI code maps are done, there are requirements that will apply in RCW 1927-560. So, and my understanding is currently the SBCC does not have authority to modify that. So, in my opinion, and I think others, and I believe the SBCC did work on legislative changes last cycle to that bill that didn't make it fully through the process. And maybe we'll come up next legislative cycle on modifying the authority. And hopefully within that, we will get some clarification on application of the risk map. If you do read that legislation in the WUI code, it specifies information on a hazard map and how things apply to the hazard map, but you're creating a risk map which has no specific application of the WUI code. So hopefully some of that legislative changes will come this next cycle. But those are my topics, and I would like to hear from the director on a few things, especially the legislative code changes that are required and the timeline for those outside of this schedule. Thank you all.
Thanks for the questions, Micah. Dustin, would you mind commenting on plans for some of the specific legislative mandates like single exit and other things that may be outside our regular code cycle?
Yes. So before this delay was being entertained, the single exit multiplex housing tag discussed how we can not necessarily crunch that work as much as some of the other work that's been done throughout the code cycle. And because they're legislative mandates, they are taking the approach that they fall outside of our 3-year cycle and don't necessarily need to abide by the December 1 adoption deadline. So the single exit multiplex housing tag is looking to get its CR 102 documents ready in the beginning of 2026. And then similarly, the temporary emergency shelter standards and dwelling unit size stuff for the building code. We haven't discussed a final timeline for that body of work, but I'm working with the tag chair on that. And we're going to begin some additional work for those starting in October and likely bring them together on a similar timeline with the single exit multiplex housing. The intent would be to include them in the publications of the 2024 codes, but they would be on a separate timeline, which might get intermingled with our new timeline as we are moving forward. But we would still keep the filings separate for those. You asked about our 30-month timeline and how, right now our plumbing code is outside of that 30 months. And, we can't necessarily rewind time and make that one happen faster. As we explore this timeline, a couple other 30-month windows will have gone past, but in the spirit of trying to improve our process and make sure that we're observing all the other statutory requirements, not that we're diminishing that requirement, but we're not able to necessarily keep all the codes within that 30-month window. And certain codes like the mechanical code have both the mechanical code, the fuel gas code, NFPA 54 and 58 with 3 separate publication dates. And then I believe everything else doesn't have any muddied water in there for publication dates on specific WAC numbered codes. And so I don't know if I caught all your points, Micah, but I think I caught the main ones you wanted talking about. If you had any follow-up, I'd be happy to respond.
Okay, sounds like that answered the question. And just for people's edification on some of the discussion that happened on the executive committee meeting, we have a requirement that we consider the international codes within 30 months of the international codes adoption, but we also talked about the importance of adopting the set of codes all at once. And because of a staggered schedule on international code adoption, there's a couple of areas where we'd be out of that 30-month window. And that's what Dustin was talking about. Todd, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Micah. I have another question for you, actually, as it relates to a city like Seattle that then has a dependency on these codes and the work that you have to do and keep on schedule for your amendments. But first, I want to maybe try to pose to everyone that when we have delays like this, our codes are not static. The process, yes, we expect to move the IRC package, and recommend to the staff, direct the staff to begin drafting the Sierra 102. But that doesn't mean these amendments are static during that time. So I think we need to all treat this as a design problem, and we're constantly improving every part of this that we can. So there are multiple amendments, I know in the IBC in particular, where groups are working right now so that once the Sierra 102 is filed, they have a response. And if anything, because of the delay, if there is something that is considered formally as substantive, then we have we have the proper time if we need to consider a 20-day or so forth. Now, I don't foresee that, but I would encourage everyone to continuously improving these and use this opportunity to make the codes better. Thank you. Oh, Micah, and then just I don't know if you're willing to turn your mic back on, and Chair, if you're willing to allow that. I'd just be curious about the Seattle question.
We, of course, as you know, all jurisdictions cannot adopt the codes prior to the state. So we work to be in alignment with the state implementation date as well, since we have our own process. But states, and Todd, you know this, or not states, jurisdictions are not required to adopt any codes. The state adopts, the jurisdictions are required to enforce. They do have options to adopt amendments. So again, we will modify our timelines to align with the state as we have done in the past several code cycles as far as implementation goes. So.
Yeah, if I may, I guess that is the question. Maybe, Micah, you can explain to everyone, you are planning on a November 1st date, and that is a dependency for the city of Seattle in this example. You would just simply slide with whatever that date is, or could you preload anything to help make up an accelerate schedule?
We would just adjust to that timeline, and real specific though for Seattle, we're more concerned about the middle housing legislation and that code change that's coming for the multiplex housing specifically. We have several members of the city that really want to see that come forward. And then of course they would like Seattle to move forward on something, but we can't because it does affect 1 and 2 family townhouse type stuff that we're prohibited from modifying. So we want to align with the state on that, and that's really the one that we don't want to see pushed out, and that's why I asked about it specifically to Dustin. The rest of the codes, however, we will align with the state process and not try to do something beforehand, since we are prohibited from doing that by state law as well. So, and I have, the delay is the delay. That's not the end of the world. And it's not the end of the world for Seattle, except those ones where they are legislative priorities that Seattle aligns with the state on, especially the middle housing stuff. So I'm sure everyone here wants to see that stuff move forward. And it sounds like that is completely outside of this proposed timeline and process. And that should move forward through without any issues, hopefully by the intended or stated adoption dates of November. So thanks, Todd, for the questions.
Okay. Thank you. Chell, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and I'm willing to make a motion to attempt to resolve the schedule question that's in front of us.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So the motion will be to adopt the May 15th version of the schedule, the one that is, I believe, on the screen right now, which is somewhere in the middle of the schedules that were presented to us. It seems reasonable to me. It doesn't seem like it's requiring staff to work overtime. It seems like it's allowing a good deal of space between now and then to get things done. So the first part of my motion would be adopt the May schedule, and the second part is to maintain the November 2026 implementation date. And the rationale for that is we're giving the legislature the opportunity to tell us their preference. If by the end of March or April 2026, they want us to maintain the November date, which is in the RCWs that they've told us to implement things by, then they can give us that direction through legislation. If they do not do that, then we can turn the implementation date into the May 1, 2027 date. The May 15th date. So that's my motion.
Okay, let's, if I may, I'd want to separate those into 2 motions so we can discuss them separately.
Sure.
So let's start with your motion on adopting an updated schedule with May 15th council action on the CR 103.
Sounds good.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Ben, you had your hand up?
We need a second before we do further discussion.
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been moved by Chell and seconded by Katie to update the schedule to the May staff proposal. Ben, go ahead.
Thanks, Jay. And I guess, yeah, I would generally support the motion and pros timeline, and yeah, I guess for the next motion as well for the implementation date. I did have a question, I guess maybe mostly for Dustin, on if there are items from the previous legislative session that we need to incorporate at a certain date for those requirements. I think like House Bill 1757 has a date of compliance of June 30th, 2026, for example. And then I'm not sure if there are other bills that had passed that would also require that. So I'm wondering how that may fit with the adjusted schedule. Thanks.
So looking at the timelines for the legislative mandated work that the SBCC is undertaking, when I drafted all this, I had intended to keep all that as part of the package and implement with the 2024 codes. Thinking on the fly though, if we have that stuff ready to go and we're doing separated filings and everything, if we can get to CR 102 at an appropriate time, with those to implement with the 2024 codes, we could potentially bring the effective dates to bear on 2021 versions of those codes with emergency rules to come forward to make sure that we meet those statutory deadlines. That's my thinking off the cuff. If we're not going to keep them as part of all the codes, that we could bring them to bear with an emergency rule filing until the 2024 codes become effective.
Thank you. Patrick, go ahead.
Yes. Regarding the adoption deadlines for the single exit stairways and the multiplex housing, the RCW says that the council must adopt changes by July 1st, 2026 for the single exit and November 1st, 2026 for the multiplex. So either the May or June deadlines will still comply with that. Thank you.
And I would also characterize that those deadlines say must adopt, and per the characterization of all the adoptions that we do, that's not the implementation date, that is the adoption date.
Okay. Any further council discussion? Okay, the motion is to adopt the staff proposal for the May adoption of codes. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. Before we move on to Chel's second motion, I just want to make a note to Dustin and staff that we really appreciate you doing the deep dive analysis on what is possible as we pushing very, very aggressively, and really pleased to have a more realistic schedule that we have high confidence in. I know it's hard to say you couldn't make the schedule that we were pushing you to by the end of the year, but really appreciate you coming back to us with options. Thank you very much.
I appreciate the comment, and believe me, it is a tough thing for me to come in and say we can't do it. I do enjoy saying yes a lot. So and actually providing. So I appreciate the sentiment there, and we will continue to push hard on stuff.
Okay. Second question is on implementation date. Chel, would you restate your motion on this?
Yes, thank you. So the motion is to maintain the November 1, 2026 implementation date for the codes. And I provided some rationale. I can speak more if there's a second.
Is there a second to this motion?
The second.
Okay. Moved by Chel, seconded by Katie. Todd, any discussion?
Well, I do, but thank you, Chair. I'll defer to Chel, though, who made the motion, if he wants to speak to his motion first.
Yeah, I think I'll say that the legislature has asked, the law says that the legislature or codes need to sit through a legislative cycle before they're implemented. That's the current law. If we go with the motion we just made, which is to have the May adoption date, they will not get to sit through a legislative cycle. But I think we can give the legislature the opportunity to weigh in on that fact when they're in session early next year by maintaining the November 1, 2026 adoption date. And if they are want to maintain some of the bills that had said implementation date, and sorry, I guess I misunderstood that as adoption date. But if they want to maintain the November 1 date, they can do something within the legislation to allow that to happen. And if not, then we would still have 7 or 8 months we'd still be 7 or 8 months before the November 1 date, and we could, as a council, then delay the implementation date to May 1, 2027. So I guess that's the primary rationale. But it's also getting the codes potentially in force earlier, which helps with the middle housing and helps with a bunch of other things that the code is dealing with.
Thank you. Todd, go ahead.
Thank you, Jill. So I'm in support of this. I wonder if there's a better way to phrase this for the council rather than stating explicitly that we intend to maintain the date, which would knowingly be in violation of statute. I wonder if there's a way to capture better with that the council intends to pursue administrative and legislative pathways to accelerate the timeline to maintain the November 1st implementation date. And then that would kind of capture that we are not sitting static. We are aggressively communicating. We're going to find every way we can to make sure we leave as big of a gap between adoption and implementation as possible.
Thank you, Todd.
That seems like a reasonable way of revising or restating the motion that I think what Todd said is the intent of the motion, whether I did not state it that way though.
Sounds like a friendly amendment if Katie is in concurrence.
Yes.
And Todd, could you restate, is it like exploring options to keep the
I would suggest that
effective date?
Yeah, I would suggest but I would also take any feedback that the council intends to pursue administrative and legislative pathways to maintain the November 1st deadline, November 1st implementation date.
Okay. Thank you. Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, I think when you do the rulemaking documents, you have to say when the intended adoption date is. And so I don't see how you could maintain the November 2026 adoption date on those documents without sort of openly violating the law. And I understand with the delays and the problems that have come up, you're going to miss some of the 30-month deadlines, but I think people understand that there's reasons for that. But it seems quite reasonable, and the public have asked for a delayed implementation as well. So a better strategy may be to pick an implementation date that complies with the law. And then, in my experience, most stakeholders pay attention to the legislative process. So if the legislature, there's a bill run to change that, they can provide feedback on that, and people will be aware if the legislature runs a change that would allow you to have it go into effect earlier. So thank you.
Micah, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for allowing the public to speak up again on this motion. It is a little different. I would not encourage the council to support this motion. Sorry, Chael. I know your intentions are good. However, I'm not sure everything could get done in that amount of timeline. I would like to hear from the director again. Yes, you've got an adoption date, but the implementation date from June to November is fairly short. And we haven't heard from the director whether or not the SBCC could create the Washington, we have the Washington Custom Code. So in other words, would ICC be able to complete the publication of those adopted codes and get those out to folks in time for training and other things to occur by that November date of implementation if you maintain it? I think if you've already voted to delay the codes, you should align that implementation with that delay as well. I think trying to shove it in there in a short window is just setting setting users up for failure to be able to have the books and for training. Thanks.
Okay, sorry, Dustin, or were you jumping?
I'll jump in and say that to get everything done after final adoption in May, to have any substantial window for review of those documents as published will be tight. We're going to try to front load drafting of those proof documents as much as possible leading up to final adoption. But that doesn't mean that on the day of final adoption, we'll be ready to send those proofs in final form to the ICC and publication that can then begin. Once the final proofs are approved, the ICC needs about 2 months to push out books.
Okay, Mr. Chair, do you mind if I step in just for a second here? I just want,
Please.
yeah, thanks. So hi, everyone. This has been a very interesting conversation. Appreciate having a chance to listen in. I want to clarify one thing, and I think maybe everyone understands this. Dustin, clarify or tell me if I'm wrong. I don't believe there's anything currently out there that is committing the council to have these rules be effective by November, except for those that are the sort of those ad hoc rules, right? The one that the legislature separately identified. So unless I'm missing something, Patrick's point is well taken. When the CR 102 is filed, that's when initially we would say what the expected date is. Of course, it doesn't lock you into it. And then really it isn't until the filing of the CR 103 when you identify what the effective date is. So there's actually some time to kind of figure that out and scope that out. And ultimately, it's the council's decision at the filing of the CR 103 as to when to set that effective date. There's nothing, in my opinion, there's nothing that would preclude the council from announcing here that it has an intent or an expectation or a hope or a goal of having these be effective in November. But really, it's that final vote on the CR 103 which affects the in which that effective date is identified and made public.
Thank you, dear.
You're correct here.
That really helps. Okay, Chell, go ahead.
Thanks. That was very, very helpful. I guess I would never hope that the Building Code Council would move implementation dates up. That would probably be disruptive to the industry to say that we're going to implement it in 2027 and then actually implement it in 2026. That I think that would not be something that would be helpful to everybody in the industry. That would be not what we should do, which is why I'm suggesting we don't immediately move it to 2027, but see what we can do, see how progress is made. There are 6 months between the May adoption date and the implementation date, and 5 months between the CR 103P filing and the implementation date if we maintain November 1, 2026. So that's the amount of time we've had in the past between those dates. And I guess I haven't heard why we wouldn't do that. And I guess I haven't heard that we shouldn't or can't do that. So I would suggest we don't immediately move our expected implementation date to 2027. Because I think once we do so, we would not want to move it back, even if conditions were favorable.
Thank you. Todd, go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you, Derek. So are we saying we don't not have November 1st published on a schedule or in a policy? And I just need to remember this.
Yeah, I would defer to Dustin on that. I'm not aware of any specific I mean, there's expectations. Obviously, that's been the plan, right? So those have been the public communications. But as far as any sort of commitment, I'm not aware of anything along those lines.
And Dustin, as you formulate an answer there or response, we have taken action as a council at some point on moving from July 1st to November 1st.
So right now on our CR 101s for the 2024 codes, at least the one I just pulled up, which is for the International Building Code. There we do have in there a statement that the estimated effective date of the 2024 codes is November 1 of 2026.
Okay, well, that's helpful. Again, that's not a commitment to November 1st. It's letting the public know that that's the estimated date.
Okay. And I think that then it relates to my second point is I tried to help recraft the motion so that we're maintaining that expectation, but not changing the date right now. So to maybe to Micah's question or point, to me, this is a no action on the expectation at this point, but a commitment to accelerate if possible to maintain that.
Yeah. Do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Please, Derek.
Yeah, so I mean, again, I think my view would be that the council can certainly signal here its intention to take action in the future to try to have an effective date of November 1st. But that's maybe aspirational. More concrete, the motion could state something along the lines of what you were saying, Todd, is that staff is directed to work with the legislature, potentially on offering legislation or potentially other stakeholders to address the question of the effective date of the delayed rules.
Krista, go ahead.
Just FYI, the codes themselves, the drafted codes, do have the effective date printed in the CR 102 document. So that would need to be amended at the adoption of the CR 103.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So yeah, so this is the text of the, I forgot that we did that. The text of the actual codes put the effective date within that. So that would be, there need to be changes to that to reflect at the filing of the CR 102 to reflect the council's commitment to when those dates will be effective.
Okay, Micah, go ahead.
Thank you again, Chair, for the opportunity. And thanks, Derek, for the clarification, and Krista. That's helpful. I guess with this motion, I'm still unclear how this affects the RCW that states these codes shall sit through a legislative session. And what I'm hearing is we're going to leave the date of implementation now, and these, you're hoping to get legislation that changes the requirement that it sits through legislative cycle. So we really wouldn't know if the November 1st implementation would actually occur until closer to the end of legislative cycle. That's several months from now. I don't think that's a benefit to the public and transparent, because that would leave us a smaller window to plan for that November date or shifting that date. In my opinion, I just don't think that's the appropriate path. Maybe a more appropriate path is not to set a date certain for 2027, but maybe, sometime after it sits through the legislative cycle as required, instead of waiting on some possible legislative change. And I'm not a fan of the legislative change based on the simple fact that now you are or would be having the legislature mandate when you have to implement these codes, and that may have impact in the future on the council's flexibility. So thank you.
Thomas, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom Deary, AHRI. Just a quick question so I can make sure I understand the process properly. Does public comment begin when the CR 102 is filed? Just because I'd seen public comment on the previous version of this that's published on the website now, and I didn't see it in this version, so I just wanted to ask that question.
So the public comment in accordance with the Administrative Procedures Act begins when we file our CR 102. All throughout our process, all the tag work has had lots of public comment as well. We get written stuff. So I'd say the public comment process, depending on if you're asking about the Administrative Procedures Act or as our process as a whole, I'd say public comment starts at CR 101 when we begin working the significant changes in existing amendments reports, we start getting public input.
Yeah, Dustin, do you mind if I add something to that real quick? Just if it's okay, Mr. Chair.
Please, always.
Yeah. Well, you know, if you hear that, everyone will have a green light now. I think that's right. Formally, right, for purposes of the Administrative Procedure Act, that public comment period formally starts at at that filing of the CR 102, and then or actually the publication of the CR 102, the proposed rules. And then the comment period begins, written comments are submitted, and then oral comments can be made at a hearing. That's scheduled. 2 hearings are scheduled for this agency. That said, the agency, SBCC, keeps all of the public comments it receives as part of the rulemaking file, which is maintained for members of the public if they're interested in seeing it and otherwise. So that would include any public comments that come in during the tag process and in connection with the CR 101 filing.
Thank you. Ken, go ahead.
So I was wondering, I don't see any legislative council members attending today. So on Monday, when you guys had your executive meeting, did any of those legislative members say that they would support creating some legislation for this in the coming year to help get this through?
Ken, thank you for that question. I was going to make some comments as chair after I'd heard from the rest of the council, but this did come up in the executive committee. Representative Rommel was interested in exploring things. The legislative committee has been invited to a meeting of the House Local Government Committee work session in mid-October, and part of what this motion would do would be enable us to bring the topic up during this meeting and explore different solutions for the implementation date. So that there may be some interest there. I would observe that from the action of our ex officio members or other members of the legislature to even introduce a bill, the language of that bill, we would have indicators on whether there's interest in providing some flexibility on the effective date at different points. So I think this is something that the legislative committee, if this motion is passed, would monitor and bring back to the council if there is specific legislation. And then per our current policies and procedures, the council taking position on specific legislation would require action by the full council. Any other council member comments? The motion on the floor is to explore administrative and legislative pathways to maintain the November 2026 effective date of the 2024 codes. Is there any final discussion? All in favor of the motion? Actually, I want to take a roll call on this one, please. Thank you.
Todd Bayreuther?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Yes, Ty?
Could you restate the motion that's on the table for this particular vote?
Sure. And Todd, jump at me if I get this, if I don't get this right, but I had said that to explore legislative and administrative pathways to maintain the November 2026 implementation date.
I think that's clean.
Okay. So does that answer your question, Ty?
Yes, thank you. And for some reason, my camera's not working. I apologize.
No worries. Could we have a roll call, please?
Todd Bayreuther?
Aye.
Chell Anderson?
Yes.
Justin Borgo,
Yes.
Roger Herring, oh, Roger's gone, sorry. Ty Menser,
Yes.
Ben Omura,
Yes.
Pete Reiki,
Aye.
Katie Sheehan,
Yes.
Dan Young, I don't see him.
Well,
on
he
here.
had to head out for a meeting 11 till noon.
Tom Young,
Yes.
so that passes 8-0.
Before, see Tom Handy has joined us.
Oh, okay.
Tom, were you able to hear the vote? You have your hand up.
Yes, I was. I just wanted to let you know that I would vote yes.
Okay, so noted. Motion carries. Thank you very much for the discussion. And as I mentioned further, we should have some dates from the legislative committee regularly on this. Thank you. Next on our agenda, and hopefully we can get through one more item before we take a break, petitions for rulemaking on A2L refrigerants.
So we have two petitions coming in. These are related to an emergency rule we have active right now for A2L refrigerants on the 2021 codes. One of these petitions is to update the emergency rule for the 2021 codes with some new standards. And or I guess the correct phrasing would be updated standards as to the ones that are in the emergency rule now. And then the second one before us today is I'm sorry, I'm opening up documents, is to bring that same language to the 2024 codes. And then these are both brought to us by Eric Vandermeer. I don't see.
He is on.
There he is. He's online. So as I get these popped open, Eric, if you wouldn't mind maybe speaking to him a little bit.
Yes, Eric Vandermeer with Delta E Consulting. And yes, I've submitted two more petitions to amend the mechanical code, both the 2021 mechanical code and the 2024 mechanical code. This is as we discussed earlier this year, the ASHRAE 15 is a continuous maintenance standard. So every 3 or 4 months, we get new addenda that, in this case, allow flexibility in how the code provisions are utilized for A2L refrigerants, which we are currently using for most systems and are required based on the phase down dates from Washington State Department of Ecology. These are essentially additional exceptions and clarifications in the code to correspond with ASHRAE 15 2024, which is known as the shaft alternative. And so these are providing more cost-effective methods to install air conditioning and heat pump systems in all building types throughout the state. So this is essentially putting us in alignment with nationally recognized standards, adopting the latest clarifications. And so part of this is going to sound kind of ridiculous, but essentially ASHRAE has now clarified the difference between piping and pipe, essentially. So piping is a defined term in ASHRAE 15. That definition has not changed. And so piping includes refrigerant pipe, but also refrigerant, all the miscellaneous valves and components that may be in the refrigerant piping. So this specifically has to do with split systems like mini split heat pumps or air conditioning units, or variable refrigerant flow systems that have refrigerant piping that's routed throughout the building. And essentially, if that if that pipe is continuous refrigerant pipe or tube, including joints and connections that have been tested in accordance with the standards, that there's more flexibility in how we route that throughout the building, providing for more cost-effective installations. And so again, this is matching, you know, vetted standards that are happening nationally to allow more cost-effective installation of these systems. So hopefully that's enough of an introduction. If there's any specific questions about this, I can answer those.
Thank you, Eric. Chal, do you have a question?
I do. Yeah. So the city of Seattle did a study and they showed that a lot of VRF systems have refrigerant leakage that increases with time as buildings settle and when wear. Do the standards here take that into consideration?
Yes, so the latest versions of the VRF systems are much more sophisticated VRF systems now. In order to safely install these systems, there are refrigerant leak detections built into them. There's refrigerant monitoring for the charges, and so so building owners are now able to monitor that through the VRF equipment software. You know, send alarms if they're seeing a change in refrigerant volume in the system and proactively catch those types of leaks. And a lot of those changes are due to the fact that the A2L refrigerants are mildly flammable, and so therefore there's a lot more stringency in the code requirement through the UL 60335-2-40 standard in how to safely install these systems into the building. And then also this rigorous pressure, you know, the testing of the piping. You know, it's very clear now that it has to be tested if you're going to use these exceptions. But these exceptions essentially allow you to avoid installing the pipe in rated vented shafts. And so by removing that shaft venting, that's also helping to save you know, energy usage for the mechanical venting of those shafts and other things. So this is really getting us back to a place where we can cost effectively install these you know, high efficiency heat pump systems. Again, there are building owners that might want to choose other paths, and this does not preclude, you know, you from going to hydronic piping or other things. This just allows flexibility. You can also, of course, install the piping in rated vented shafts if you're concerned about this. This just allows an exception to not to.
Okay, thanks. And then if you scroll to the second page, there's a word missing on exceptions 3. It should say probably and has been tested in accordance with, I think the word tested is missing.
Right here.
I don't know if you agree, Eric, but it seems like.
Yes, I must have missed putting that in there. It is a typo, yeah. Sorry, too many things done at 10 p.m. or whatever to try to get something out based on multiple people saying we got to get an amendment out on this. So.
No, appreciate it. No worries.
Okay.
That's it for me.
Thank you, Chal. Dustin, can you talk process for a second on what's the action that SBCC would be taking today with these petitions?
No action today. And if I left marks on the agenda for council action, that was my mistake. These are new petitions from Eric for the council to consider. So this is our introduction of these petitions. So these will need to come back to our next regular council meeting and have action taken at that time for a finding of emergency and then also a vote on the language. I did have a question for you, Eric. So we have the two petitions, one's for 2021, one's for 2024. Those are substantially the same, essentially, correct?
Yeah, they're different only in that the section numbering changes between 2021 and 2024. Essentially, the model code in 2024 IMC changes the structure of how, I think the section that we're looking at on the page right now, this is, yeah, they essentially combined the A2Ls and the B2Ls into the same section as the A2, A3, B2, B3. So there's a slightly different section numbering but yeah, it's the same language, just different sections that the
Gotcha.
provisions apply to. So.
And then one follow-up on that one. So this, the one that we're looking here on screen is an update to the 2021 codes emergency rule. If we bring the emergency rule for the 2024, that's essentially to get it into the main body of the code as we, go through there, since it's coming in after our tag process. Is there room for, or is there anticipated updates for this as we go through the 2024 cycle? So if we go through the emergency rule process and then expedited rulemaking to bring this into permanent effect for the 2024 codes, do we see a need that this will need to be updated before the 2027 code? It's just a procedure question.
I'm not sure I quite understand the question. So
is there a potential for updates needing to be brought via further emergency rule down the line with the 2024 codes?
There's potential, yes. There's new addendum coming out every few months, but yeah, so this does adopt addendum A, the revisions in addendum A, which has been issued was issued at the end of May of 2025 by the ASHRAE 15 committee. This also picks up the changes in addendum B, which closed for public comment at the beginning of September. So it's gone through the public comment process, but it's not had formally issued. Again, the addendum B basically says that you don't have to put it in a shaft, or if you voluntarily put it in a shaft, it doesn't have to be vented. There is potential that they might change a word when that's actually issued based on that public comment process, but we may have that, in the next few weeks here. I don't know, when those addendas are going to get addenda B would get published formally by ASHRAE 15. So,
okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, I'm gonna take council questions first and then go to public comment. Ben, go ahead.
Thanks, Jay. And yeah, I mean, Eric mentioned it. I think this is an important change to make to the existing emergency rule to increase and retain affordability for these types of systems, to have them installed in a permitted and legal manner, and still meet the code requirements. And then I guess for those of us that aren't aware, there's upcoming deadlines for installing systems under the A1 refrigerants coming up. So there's a cliff coming up at the beginning of next year where a lot of those A1 systems will not be available. And these A2L systems that Eric is providing a pathway for in this language will be the only available systems to be installed. So I think it's really important to have this available. Thanks. Oh, and I guess, Dustin, I did have a question. So Eric did file this as an amendment to the existing emergency rule. So we had discussed this at the committee meeting. Was there any changes to the process for the emergency rule hearing, and when council would take action for that? Thank you.
So if we got this as just an update without a new petition form from OFM, I think I'd be treating it a little bit different. But I got an all new petition form with a hard date. And so I'm treating this as a new petition for the council to hear. And even though it is updating an existing emergency rule.
Thank you. Ken, go ahead.
Eric, I didn't attend the committee meeting, so I see that you're making changes to the 1109.42 and 1109.32 and the 1109.2.5, and all referencing the new ASHRAE 2024. My question is, did the committee look at the other sections that are referenced for ASHRAE 15 and 15.2 and 34? And with it being updated to 2024, did anybody go through to make sure the 2024 update didn't affect those other sections?
So Ken, this wasn't actually on the agenda for the committee. The discussion at the committee level was just to get it on the agenda, if possible, for this council meeting.
Okay, then that would be I guess my question to Eric then, did you already go through that work? Just make sure those other sections aren't affected by the updated ASHRAE.
Yes, so I have gone through all the revisions in 2024. Remind everybody when I submitted the petition for the current emergency rule and a bunch of the petitions for the 2024 mechanical, ASHRAE 15 and 34 standards reference the 2022 version, and ASHRAE decided to move the publication of that standard up a year. And instead of being at the end of 2025 or sometime in 2025 to 2024, so it came out earlier than we were all anticipating. Just because there's been so many addendum. And so there was a discussion back in January of the council whether we should now essentially when I submitted the emergency rule position, that this was coming out at about the same time, and so I referenced the 2022 version. The State Building Code Council does have an interpretation or opinion, I guess, on file, stating that you can use the latest version of the ASHRAE standards and the latest addenda. But to answer your question, yes, I have reviewed all the addenda. I did had a meeting with Seattle where we went through a lot of the different changes. Most of the changes are very editorial, except what has to do with really the A2L refrigerants. And so agree that, and a reminder, you have to comply with both the mechanical code and with ASHRAE 15 for the charging language at the beginning of chapter 11. So yes, we have done an extensive review and don't see any, I haven't seen any things that I'd be concerned about adopting in ASHRAE 15 2024. So or the other standards there.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Eric. Tom, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom Deary, AHRI, speaking in favor. And I would just note that this has also been addressed at least in principle in the 2027 IMC. It's on the consent agenda for April. We've submitted similar amendments in other states, and a lot of states, I think, are addressing this in a similar manner. So we think that this is consistent with the forthcoming mechanical code, and we thank Mr. Vandermeer for submitting it.
Great. Thank you. Carolyn, go ahead.
Just real quick, Carolyn Logue, Washington Air Conditioning Contractors Association. We also agree with these changes and look forward to the discussion when it comes up.
Very good. Well, we will see this at a future meeting. Without objection, we'll take the petition with the Scrivener's error fix that Shell had fixed to add testing in the one area that it was admitted.
Mr. Chair, I would like to bring this to the MVPE committee as well. Could we maybe entertain a motion to direct this down to the MVP committee before we hear it again at the council?
So moved, Ben.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to refer this petition to the MVPE committee. Is there any discussion?
Both petitions.
Sorry, thank you. Both petitions to the committee. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Thank you. Is there anything further we need on this item, Dustin?
No, sir.
Okay. With that, I'd like to call a recess of the council. We'll return at 12:10 to jump into committee reports. So it's 12:10 and the State Building Code Council for our September 26th meeting is back from recess. I know we had a number of people that couldn't make the full meeting. I'm wondering if we could have a roll call, please.
Todd Byerther, Jay Arnold,
Here.
Shell Anderson, Scott Bastiani, Justin Borgo, Tom Handy,
Here, but intermittently.
Justin's here too. I'm gonna have to switch to my phone in about 20 minutes.
and Roger is gone. Ty Menser,
I'm here and I have about 65 minutes left before I will have to exit.
and I see Todd has his hand raised. I will mark you as present, Todd. Ben Omura,
Still here.
Pete Reiki,
Here.
Katie Sheehan, Dan Young. Dan had to leave too. Tom Young,
Here.
that just puts us at a quorum.
Okay, thank you. We'll monitor if Chell or others rejoin. Our next item of business is committee reports. We'll start with the MVPE committee and the UPC recommendation. And I'm wondering, Ben, if you're prepared to talk to this item.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Tom, I don't know if you want to say anything before I go over what we discussed at the committee meeting.
Yeah, sure. Tom Young, so I'm the newest council member. I chaired my very first MVPE committee meeting September 12th.
My apologies, Tom. I had forgotten about that appointment. I should have called on you first. Please go ahead.
No problem. So it's like I showed up to the concert to sit in the audience and I was called up on stage to sing on that first meeting. It would be an injustice for me to try to speak on this since I didn't put in any of the work to bring this petition to where it's at. And without the background, I wouldn't be providing good content for our audience. So then I would please like to hand it to Ben to provide the meaningful discussion on this.
Yeah, so thanks, Tom, and yeah, I'd be happy to. So, Steph, yeah, if you want to bring up the change petitions that we had for the UPC with the tag action on it, and we can look at that.
Just one moment, I'll have it up for us. There it is. It doesn't want to play nice going across my screens. Here we go.
All right. Thank you. So these were part of the meeting attachments, of course. So as we discussed at the committee meeting, the tag made it through all the proposals that we received for the UPC, and all of the tag action, I believe, was unanimous, either in support of recommending a proposal move forward or denying it. And typically the reasons for denial were either the proposals did not feel like it was ready for integration or it wasn't providing the value that the tag was looking for in adding in new state-specific requirements. So I would recommend that we carry forward the recommendations of the tag and move these into the CR 102. And I'm happy to go through any specific proposals that we want to. I don't think there's anything that was really really significant in terms of deviating from current or model code requirements. Mostly it was maintaining state code requirements and other provisions that the state has maintained.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Ben. Before I ask for a motion, I want to see if there's any questions from council members or public comment. Seeing neither, Ben, do you want to make a motion?
Sure. Yeah, I would like to make a motion that the council moves the proposals that the tag recommended move forward into the CR 102 document.
I'll second that.
Okay. Been moved by Ben and seconded by Peter that the council move the tag and committee recommended code proposals to the CR 102 process. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. And I did see Chell vote on that particular one, so let the record show that Chell has joined us. And Katie, are you here too? I didn't.
I am, yes.
Okay, very good. Let the record show that Katie has joined us as well.
And then Jay, I'm back also. This is Dan Young.
Okay, Dan, thank you very much.
Yep.
So that motion passed. Next, we have the BFRW committee. Roger wasn't able to join us. Dustin, could you?
I assume he was going to ask me to introduce similar to what we had for the NDPE. So at the BFRW committee meeting on September 12th, we deliberated on both the residential code proposals recommended up from the technical advisory group. We also discussed the emergency rule that came before the council at the last meeting for the side yard setbacks requirements. And so first, let me bring up the IRC proposals and talk about those. But the IRC tag went through and reviewed all the proposals that came in from the public, developed some proposals of their own, and moved the package that is posted for the meeting and that I'm in the process of getting on screen forward to the committee. The committee deliberated on those proposals. We didn't open up any specific proposal to discuss further or make any changes. And so the package as recommended by the technical advisory group went before the BFRW and is now in the same status as it was leaving the technical advisory group and before the council here to recommend towards CR 102 drafting. So similar format. One thing that you might notice different on this sheet as compared to the last one is we had multiple revisions for multiple proposals on these ones, and some of those revisions led to the tag denying those petitions. And we didn't have any super controversial proposals going through there. And for the most part had consensus on the proposals moving forward. This one that is an interesting one at the bottom is 24 GP2054. This was brought up at the end of the IRC tag process that staff, we've missed this one. The proponent didn't reach out when this wasn't on any agendas up until that last tag meeting. So at that tag meeting, the technical advisory group didn't take any action on this proposal. We discussed it briefly at the September 12th BFRW committee meeting, and no specific action was taken. So as part of a motion for the IRC package, we do need something specific to address this proposal. And I believe that we were looking for Erica Spiritos to potentially be here. I don't see her on the line. And Todd had his name on this. His name is still on the proposal. He was helping Erica get this one into the council, and it was received on time. It just hasn't been deliberated by the tag. And so, Todd, you got your hand up. I will yield to you now.
Okay, and Todd, before you get started, I'm hearing a little background noise. I think, Dan Young, can you check that you're muted? Thank you. Todd, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, sound check, and can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Chair, if it's the rule of the council, I can step down and speak to this. I gave technical assistance to the proponent on this. I did contact the proponent, and she advised she'd prefer that I would give a technical description of this if desired. Okay, if that's the case, this proposal is and we did discuss it in BRFW. This proposal is adds references to 3 new standards that are related to pre-manufactured assemblies. So these are ANSI standards that were developed, and states, depending on their structure, are either some states are like this is proposing, bringing it into the code. Some states are doing it through administrative agencies. This particular petition is word for word on what has been proposed at the 2027 ICC hearings. That said, if there have been changes since the 2 committees have recommended this forward, then they are not reflected in this. So this is an IRC proposal, but if you see in blue there, which is a little unusual in terms of code amendment, that is signaling that likely this should also be in the IVC chapters so that it's in both codes. The 2 actions were to reach out to the proponent. I did that. She deferred to me or asked me to speak to the council. And the second was to reach out to LNI, and that has not happened yet. So that would have to be consideration of the council. But this is not addressing specifically HUD code. It could impact if LNI is doing the certification, but without going to right now, party certifications possible if this reference the standards. So I will stop there. I won't go deeper if necessary.
Okay. Todd, you broke up a little bit at the end. If we have further comment, it might be helpful to just do audio. A question for staff on this. Given that this has not been recommended by the tag, what's the ask on this particular proposal? I was under the impression that we could only consider codes that have been recommended by the tag.
So this particular proposal was not included in the motion that directed the proposal down to the tag. So the way the wording or the way the statute reads is that a proposal that is referred to the tag may not be considered by the council or committees if it doesn't get the blessing from that tag. So this proposal didn't get referred to the tag. And, you know, this is based on what Todd's saying is a 2027 code language that we're expecting to come down. And we're getting a little bit ahead of that one to bring it in. And so the ask here is, does the council want to include this in CR 102 for the 2024 codes, or is this one missed the boat and we'll let the model code bring it forward later, or potential legislation if there's anything like that happening as well?
Okay, Chell, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that was a very good question. I wasn't, I guess, aware that we were going to discuss this today, so I haven't reviewed the proposal. It wasn't specifically highlighted on the agenda, and I'm trying to get to it right now. So I would prefer if, since the CR 102 is not happening anytime super soon, if we are able to discuss this on a different date when I will be aware of it in advance. And others probably would be in the same boat. I mean, we could discuss it today, but I would suggest we take no action on it today because I wasn't aware of it, and I'm guessing lots of other people weren't aware of it either.
Okay. Appreciate the comment. Other questions or comments? Okay, I do want to separate the questions on this. First is moving the IRC recommendations from the BFRW onto CR 102. Could I entertain a motion to do that?
May I offer a friendly amendment to minus
Please.
this one proposal?
Please. Well, yes, that was my intention in entertaining the motion, since the one proposal wasn't recommended. So
moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I second it. That's Dan.
Okay, it's been moved by Chell and seconded by Dan to move the 2024 IRC recommendations from the tag in the BFRW to CR 102. This does not include the
Number 054.
054, which we will discuss separately. Any discussion? Patrick, please.
Yes, thank you. I was just going to speak really quick. I represent BIW. I also served on the tag, and we tried our best to work quickly through these proposals and support moving these forward to CR 102. Appreciate all the time and effort from all the volunteers and staff working on this. And the miscellaneous proposal that was kind of forgotten or wasn't brought to the council, we avoided taking action on that since it wasn't sent to us, because anything that's sent to us, we have to approve in order for the council to take action on it. So we wanted to leave that up to the council to decide how to proceed. So thank you.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you for that explanation. Micah, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the tag's work on this. Again, you see the number of proposals here, and this is where I spoke earlier about being rushed. If Dustin could show the list again instead of the proposal, I think it's not being considered, that'd be great. But there are some, Dustin did mention there were some that, or most of these didn't have any controversy, and I'm not sure that's the case. There's some that I believe still need correlation, and those were discussed at the tag, although the tag did move them forward. One of those is going to be the residential sprinkler systems with the multiple appendixes involved or appendices involved. So I think those may need to be discussed as hey, these did have some issues and concerns. And of course, as the council fully is aware of the EV infrastructure change, that was definitely controversial, and that is on this list. So again, I think we need to be clear that yes, you're just voting these forward for the public comment, but anticipate some of these coming forward for correlation questions and public comments. It wasn't as easy as it was made out to be. And I appreciate the tag getting through all these in such a rushed manner. Again, I think if we had more time, some of the correlation issues would have been solved and some of the questions would have been thoroughly answered, because I'm still not understanding where we stand on the appendix and chapter 2904 for sprinklers. That is a major shift. We did not adopt P2904 previously, and now we're adopting that entire section. And so I think that needs to be pointed out, and we'll have more to come during the public comment hearings. Thanks.
Thank you, Micah. Looking forward to hearing those details during public comment. Other comments on the motion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor of moving the IRC recommended changes from tag and BFRW to CR 102, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. Second question is on this this particular proposal from Erica that Todd had talked to. Is there any council discussion on this? I have a question for Todd, if you're available, or others if they could answer. Given that this is a 2027 code cycle amendment, what is driving the interest in pulling this forward?
In terms of the merits of it, or in terms of the process to resolve the that it wasn't submitted? Let me rephrase
the merits of this versus it, being part of the 2027 model code.
Yeah, this is part of a larger effort in the state of Washington. This was submitted by the group that Erica Spiritos is the executive director, which is one of the partners. The others are related to two housing efforts. One sponsored by HUD, that is being administered by the King County Housing Development Consortium. I believe that's the correct name. And then the other is Proviso that led to, I believe it's called Starter Homes. So while I'm not speaking for those organizations and those efforts, this is a part of a larger effort in the state. And so this is one of the action items that the group and the proponent volunteered to bring forward.
Thank you. That's helpful, Todd. Micah, go ahead.
Just a question on this, because I think the proposal should be heard at some point. Is there a way that staff or SBCC could send this back down to the tag, considering you just extended the timeline? If this was originally part of proposals but was just overlooked, it seemed like a process error shouldn't kill this proposal and not let it be heard by the tag. Thanks.
Okay. Staff, any comments on that, or from tag chairs or tag member?
I don't see an issue with directing this one down to the technical advisory group and bringing back up via the channel that everything else has gone through in light of the timeline change.
Okay. Chell, to your concern that this was not highlighted as
I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine with moving it down. I
Okay.
just don't want to, like, approve it or something into the CR 102 without having looked at it. And I actually can't find it on the website in a link anywhere. So I don't know where it is, but I would be fine with moving it down to the tag for review, and I'll make that motion.
It's been moved to refer GPT 2054 to the tag.
Second.
And seconded by Dan.
Yep.
Chell, do you want to speak to their motion, and we'll go to Todd?
Yeah, I think it was missed in error, and we have time, and to the extent that the tag chair is willing to take it on, I think having it reviewed is worth doing.
Okay, thank you. Todd, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just recusing myself.
Okay. Noted for the record. Any other comments? Okay, the motion is to move this proposal back down to the IRC tag. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And let the record show that Todd has abstained. Third item on our agenda for this committee report is the side yard setback recommendation and special council committee creation.
Yes.
Justin.
So at the BFRW committee meeting, we discussed the emergency rule proposal provided by the Washington State Association of Fire Marshals. They were not prepared to make a recommendation on that rule and wanted to form a special council committee to deliberate further that specific topic. And so the ask from the BFRW is to ask for the council to create a special committee with some, I guess, guardrails on composition and time frame for the work. And I didn't have any recommendations from that committee on what the time frame should be or what the composition of the committee should be.
Okay. Todd, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a mechanism that, to my knowledge, we have not tried in recent history on the council. It's in our policies and actually it's in our bylaws, I believe, that the chair of a standing committee, or I believe it reads the chair of the council, can form a special council committee. Unlike an ad hoc committee that is made up of only council members, to my reading, this is a little more flexible. So we volunteer to put this out there. Guarantee it implies that I probably will lead this effort, but I will bring everything to the council. So it's a council decision on the formation of this and the intent. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Todd. My suggestion here would be that we vote to authorize the formation of the committee and ask staff to come back with options on membership at a future meeting. Is there any further comment or discussion? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion. Chell, go ahead.
Yeah, Dustin, could you talk about that? The staff time and burden of creating a special counsel versus any other options that are available to the council?
As far as creating this one, I think we're just trying to create something that's not necessarily the BFRW committee to deliberate this. It was not a special technical advisory group. That would be an option to us, or another ad hoc committee as well could be created. I think that this one is intended to be a committee of council members, at least based on the discussion from the BFRW committee, and to discuss, what we've got, the concerns that have been being raised for the side yard setback topic, which is, how this impacts affordability, accessibility on the side yards, and taking into account ladder placements and emergency operations that might occur within those spaces in the event that the emergency situations develop. So we can form a special council committee, ad hoc committee, or potentially a special technical advisory group, but we would need a motion here to do that. I guess the BFRW could have created this committee at the meeting as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, and the intent was to include additional stakeholders outside of the council, specifically trying to bring building officials, fire officials, and planning representatives together so that this harmonizes development codes and life safety codes.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like that there was some interest from the BFRW in going beyond council members in this committee.
That was my memory, specifically on the development code and planning front. But we can review the notes and video if we need to, or decide as a council.
So I was there too, Chair. This is Dan Young. And Todd's right. There was a desire to have others in there.
Thank you, Dan. Patrick, go ahead.
Yes, I mean, I have concerns about additional staff time, which really needs to be focused now on finishing off the 2024 codes being put towards this. I recall the committee talking about wanting to, have stakeholders involved, but I'm wondering if it's allowed to have non-council members be members of a committee, if that's what the suggestion is. Thank you.
I would say that there's nothing specifically precluding non-council members from this committee, but if Dirk's on, if he has a thought on that, I would.
I'm here, and Patrick, you raised a good point. we haven't given any, I haven't given any special consideration to this, and would be loath to shoot more from the hip than I usually do in these situations. But I think the natural understanding of a committee would be that it would be a committee of members of the council, and we need to look a little bit closer to see whether that can be supplemented with other non-members. But that would be my first take on this. I think, I guess what I'd say would be this. I would endorse, if you're going to move forward with this idea of having separate conversations about who potential membership is, Dustin, and we can bring that back. But I would be careful about going down this path of having a special council committee for this purpose if the plan is to, affirmative plan is to include non-council members as part of the committee.
Okay. Dustin, what's the time frame for action for this committee, given previous emergency rule petition and other topics?
I would say that this particular committee has an open-ended time frame. The requirement for minimum times for emergency, or not emergency, but petitions for rulemaking, we've satisfied those with the response back to the Washington State Association of Fire Marshals, that we denied the petition, but that we are taking action to further discuss the topic.
Yeah, thank you. Katie, go ahead.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Could we, instead of calling it an ad hoc committee, say it's a technical advisory group? There's at the bottom, we have our required tags, but then it says that we can establish one or more tags when we feel like a subject needs to be researched. And that does, my understanding is that tags can have multiple, or it doesn't have to be made up of our own committee member or council members.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think that's sort of the natural way of understanding how I've used that expression twice, natural. There's nothing natural about this at all, but I mean, that would, that would be the way that I would understand the construct under the bylaws to work, is that if you want to bring in members to provide advice along these lines, not members, but non-members to bring in advice, that would be through the tag process.
Okay, Chell, go ahead.
My recollection, which could be wrong, was that there was a limit of one council member on a tag, or one voting council member on a tag. Is that a statute, or am I?
I think it's just further down in here. It's we have right now we keep the chair on there, and then we have an alternate chair, but both of them are not allowed to vote at the same time. So one voting council member on the tag at a meeting.
So if we wanted half council members and half non-council members, we don't have a legal way of doing that. It doesn't sound like.
Well, let's hold off on that, Chell. I mean, we could maybe come up with something that makes sense, but as I said, a little bit shooting from the hip here.
My thinking on this one was a committee formed by council members inviting the relevant subject matter experts to come to the meetings and discuss, and then the votes would be held by the council members.
Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to overthink this, because the intent here is to have a vehicle for the council to do independent research and bring in the relevant subject matter experts. If it's, they don't have to be members. It's not the intent that they take votes. It's to bring in the subject matter expertise that we feel, in my opinion, wasn't, the VRFW was not the best vehicle to bring those experts in. And in this unique case, we are trying to bring together, again, the development code concerns, which are not in the realm of the State Building Code Council. So it was really trying to work with local jurisdictions that have that authority and power to try to bring this. I wouldn't say conflict, just to try to bring these together, because what we were afraid of was using the authority of the State Building Code Council to use a state level restriction that would supersede local level considerations of planning, zoning, setbacks, things like that. So,
yeah,
I hope that helps.
And if I can jump back in, with that clarification, then I don't see any limitations in the bylaws to creating a special or an ad hoc committee of members who would then work with stakeholders to help them get educated to take action on this.
good. Micah, go ahead.
So just to clarify, and thank you, Chair, recognize me. Just a clarification, this would not result in rulemaking. It's just identifying an item that local jurisdictions could then modify or adopt in their own codes.
Todd, is your hand raised to answer?
Yes,
that?
it is. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
please.
Chair. So yes, Micah. So real quickly, in the BRFW, when we were contemplating, could this action have unintended consequences in terms of local development codes, setbacks, dimensional standards, so forth, we didn't explore all the possibilities and didn't feel we had the right subject matter experts to go down that path. So this is information gathering, and with no intended, because the council already took action to not find an emergency basis. So, and the second action the council took was to refer to the BRFW for further exploration.
Okay, thank you.
So no rulemaking.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, since the discussion seems to be that this would be a council committee and with inviting some subject matter experts or stakeholders to discuss, are there particular council members that are interested in being on this committee? Tom, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to be on that committee.
Dan?
Yes, I would like to be on the committee also.
Okay. Todd?
Yes, please.
Okay. And I would also note that this particular issue is of importance to cities and would be something I would be interested in, or if we were looking at this being too big. I know that Angela is not able to attend today, but having a building official would be useful as well. So with that, I think we have some information and would entertain a motion to direct staff to form a committee and direct staff with a proposal of how the committee might work to discuss at a future meeting.
So moved. This is Dan.
Okay. Been moved by Dan for a second.
Second, this is Tom. Yeah.
Okay, seconded by Tom. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of forming this ad hoc committee and having staff come back with a proposal on membership and operation, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Is there anything else from the BFRW committee?
No, sir.
Okay. That takes us to item 8 on our agenda. Moving 24 GP1 114 to CR 102 with the IBC.
So with this proposal, we had two proposals that weren't necessarily I guess they were competing, but one of the proposals had more change in it as compared to the other proposal, and they got moved up to the council via the same method all the rest of the proposals did. Let me pull up the proposal log for the group 1 codes. Give me one moment for it to get it opened. And then if we need to, we can pop open this proposal as well. Come on over. All right, here's the IBC. This one's number 114. The heck did it go? Here it is on this line with the yellow sidebar. So this one went through the tag process alongside, oh shoot, I believe it's a 038 there. And the tag moved this one up to the council without specifically denying 038 or 114. And at the council meeting, February 6th of 25, this was passed back to the BFRW committee to decide specifically which proposal should move forward. At the April 11th, 2025 BFRW committee, they made the decision to recommend proposal 114 and deny 038. And this one just never came back before the council to be officially moved to CR 102. And so that is the ask of the council today, is to make that official movement.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council members? Any public comments on this issue? Micah, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, for the recognition. Being the WABO TCD chair and them denying that proposal, that's fine. I think there was some correlation that occurred with Eric's proposal, and definitely support his proposal and the action from the BFRW and TAG committee on moving that forward. So urge the council support on this action. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any further comment from council or the public? Okay, could I entertain a motion to move this proposal as part of our CR 102 package?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second, Ben.
Okay, it's been moved by Chell, seconded by Ben, to move GP 114 to CR 102. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Excellent. Okay, we're on to item 9 of our agenda, other business. Dustin, do we have any other business to discuss?
No, sir.
Okay. Very good. Then that takes us to the end of our agenda. Thank you all for a productive several hours, and go Mariners. We are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate the time today.
Thank you, Jay.